All right.
All
So our
right.
next call is going to be Dean, and Dean is from North Carolina. And Dean wants to talk about the Kalam, the cosmological argument. Hi, Dean. Can you hear us? You're on the line.
Hey, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Hey, Dean.
We can.
Awesome.
Right.
Hey,
Is it
hey,
Dean
what's going
Meadows?
on, guys? Yes, it is.
Hi. How are you?
I'm
Welcome. All
doing great.
right.
I'm
Let's
doing
talk
great. And
about it.
if I'm lucky enough, I'll be able to visit faceless form. I've gotten the okay that as long as I don't cause a disruption, which I'm not, I can.
Oh, no,
all
I
that
don't think
stuff.
you
So,
would. I'd be
so yeah,
excited
No,
to see you and
Shannon
have a
might.
chat there.
So we'll see.
I probably will.
yeah,
I'll definitely I cause a ruckus everywhere I go. I'm a going concern.
constant. So can I ask a preliminary question before I talk about the
Of
Kalam?
course.
Dan and Paul said that if there's a direct experience of God, that would be evidence for them personally. I guess my question is, why? What would cause you to think that was actually God? Why wouldn't you say something like, "Man, I must have been hallucinating"?
So I need to clarify if I was unclear. It would be evidence. I don't think for me it would be sufficient evidence. So it wouldn't automatically cross a line for me. I absolutely would get myself checked out if I was hearing voices, if I was, if I had my head bashed against the wall, if I had, vision. But, that said, like on the Damascus Road, for example, like the first thing I would be doing is grabbing for my cell phone and trying to take a picture, right? And I would be looking
Yeah,
to see if I would be looking to, because I'm me now, I would be going, like when the vision was over, I'd be running to see, well, are there footprints there where I saw the Jesus standing?
mm,
And obviously that alone wouldn't tell me, that would just tell me something if there was. It wouldn't necessarily confirm if he wasn't, because Jesus could have been hovering above the ground or not, been in my mind in some other way. But sorry, so personal experience for me would be evidence. And I'm frustrated when people say things like there's no evidence for God, because there's evidence. It's just, is it sufficient evidence? So
gotcha.
does that answer your question? It wouldn't be sufficient for me, but
No,
it would be,
that answers my question because I was curious as to whether or not that would be like you clarified sufficient for you or not. So my question is about the Kalam. I haven't watched. I don't know how many videos you've done on it. Have you done one
One.
video on it or two? I don't.
mm, well, it comes up repeatedly. So I have
think
a
I've
couple of
watched. Yeah, I
dedicated to
think
it.
I've watched one of them. And
I have
so I
one
guess
specifically
my
from William
question
Lane
would
Craig.
be.
Yep.
I guess my question would be obviously the third premise, the universe as a cause is the conclusion of the argument. So I guess my question is, where do you disagree with the first two premises
I think
of
it
the
would be
argument?
beneficial for somebody to lay out the premises for anybody watching who maybe hasn't heard the
Yeah, and
argument of
just so
either
that
one
we're
of
on
you.
the same
Okay,
page.
so
Dean, I know there's multiple
so the
versions. Go
first
ahead.
premise is, the first premise is whatever begins to exist has a cause. Sometimes he says sometimes what Craig says is whatever begins to exist has a cause in its existence. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause or has a cause in its existence, depending on which version.
Right. So I don't have a problem with the first thing that begins to exist has a cause. I'm okay with in the scope of our space time. Like when we get beyond Planck time, when we get before, the Big Bang, I feel like time is coherent, and you obviously need time for something to be causal, right? Like I disagree a little bit with Craig on this, is that he talks about simultaneous causes that are like, there's no temporal difference between the cause and the effect. I feel like that's a little bit incoherent begging the question, but we'll set that aside for a second. So I'm generally okay with the universe, whatever begins to exist as a cause. The second, where this really bothers me, is the universe began to exist, and they point to cosmology to say, well, look, Big Bang cosmology says that our universe began to exist. But what the theist is talking about generally is the cosmos. They're not talking about the universe, which is our instantiation of space-time, which generally scientists agree that our instantiation of space-time had a starting point. But that says literally nothing about whether we are embedded inside some other instantiation of space-time, or whether, like, what's outside
Okay.
of us. And so when you talk about the universe began to exist, yes, our universe began to exist, but that doesn't tell us anything about the general cosmos.
Gotcha. So I think that's probably a point where I would ask a question with regards to what you've said would be, so what evidence would you point at that would suggest that there is something outside of our space-time universe that would be classified as a cosmos? I mean, are we talking multiverse? Are we talking many worlds hypothesis? I mean, it seems to me like if we're going to say there's something outside of our universe and we're going to call this thing the cosmos, then it seems like we'd have to have evidence for this thing called the cosmos that's not our universe.
Right. So I'm going to give you two things. I'm going to give you my personal, what I think based on
Okay.
nothing. And I'm also going to tell you, so I'll start with the second thing, which is what evidence do we have? We have no evidence for anything at all prior to the Planck time of the Big Bang. There is no, people have hypothesized possible ways to even collect evidence, but we don't have anything. We know less than nothing. No, we know nothing. We know nothing about what is outside of our instantiation of space-time, including one of the things that often, and you notice I never said matter in this, but everyone says matter began then. I actually don't believe that. What I have evidence for is that matter/energy cannot be created nor destroyed. That's a thing that is true about our universe. If one wants to extrapolate
Okay.
something to be true, why would someone insist that the singularity, like that's not nothing. The singularity isn't nothing. The singularity is a thing outside of space-time, theoretically. So the evidence is we have absolutely no evidence. My general argument with the Kalam is we can't say anything at all about what happened outside of our universe because we have no way of measuring it. So when someone posits something, just like I just would posit basically the idea that energy is eternal. I think energy is the brute fact. Other people think God is the brute fact. Me,
Mhm.
with absolutely no evidence fact, thinks that the idea of the energy is the brute fact is very consistent with everything we've seen. I also think that God is very
So,
consistent with everything we've seen because God is non-falsifiable and it's their idea. But because we know energy exists, that's one fewer assumption, right? We are aware of energy. We know that it
well,
can't be created and nor destroyed. So anyway, go ahead. I've been talking for a while. Go ahead.
yeah, but yeah, you laid out a lot there. I'm going to try and move through it. So, so you've said we know little to nothing. We don't know anything about anything outside of our universe.
Correct.
And then you said, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that you're extrapolating that energy is eternal and we don't have any evidence that energy is eternal. You think it's a brute fact. So my question then is, why is that not a faith position that energy is eternal if there's no evidence that it would be? It's just contained inside of our universe. Then if we posit two other things like causal finitism and the idea that actual infinites don't exist, then it seems to me then energy couldn't be eternal.
What is
So it
your
would have
what is
a
your understanding
point
of
of
the
singularity.
phrase? What is your understanding of the phrase brute
Do what?
fact? What do you understand the phrase
Brute
brute fact to mean?
So I would say that brute fact is was it I would name it Casey. He said the universe just is. It just is necessarily.
Right.
So a
You
brute
understand that brute
fact
fact is a
is
go ahead.
something that just is. It just is.
Right. So
Without necessarily any explanations, just is.
right. That's generally the philosophical idea of a brute
Yeah.
fact is just something that has no
Yeah.
further explanation. So when I get into these
Yeah.
conversations, I don't talk about it as a faith position because I actually don't have faith in it.
Yeah.
When I posit energy as a brute fact, I don't see
Well,
any
let me
evidence that we
clarify
do
real
have.
quick about faith. The way that I'm using faith in that sense is the classical definition that sometimes is posits towards faith is something you believe something without evidence for it. So that's what I mean
Right.
by
And
not that you
and
believe
that's pretty
it,
much the so
but that
so
you
I'm with
do it.
you.
Yeah.
Anytime anyone says, "Oh, I think that's a brute fact," they are immediately saying to you, "I have no evidence for this. I'm just putting it forth as something that is consistent with the rest of what I see, but I don't have evidence
Yeah.
for it itself.
So
So if
real quick,
basically when
go
people are
ahead.
saying that God is uncaused, they're saying God is a brute fact. And then I'm
Mhm.
saying, okay, well, you have a brute fact of God, and I have a brute fact of energy, and neither of us have actual evidence for either.
Yeah.
So we are kind of in the same boat. I'm willing to
But
get with you on that point.
well, I guess what I'm saying is I'm using a classical definition that's sometimes talked out as faith. I personally don't think that faith is believing something without evidence, but that's a conversation for a different time. So
Right.
what I
But you,
guess
but
what
you,
I'm
but
saying, what I'm asking, do what?
sorry, and I may have I just
But
want to clarify that I may have misspoken. It wasn't without evidence. When a brute fact is something that has no further explanation. So I may have
yeah,
misspoke.
no,
So
I'm with you
my
there.
apologies to the audience
We're
if I said that wrong.
no, it's fine. We're in agreement. We're in agreement there. So how do you posit energy as being eternal in light of something like Hawking's singularity theorem or the Born-Usually-Villain theorem that says, a universe that has been expanding on average of its existence must have a beginning. And they've even adjusted that toward, hey, even if there's a change in the equation of gravity, even if relativity is off, and this is what Lincoln says in his book, Many Worlds in One, that even if relativity is off, this would still hold true that there has to be a beginning, or that there would be a beginning to the universe. That seems, any universe that's been expanding along its history, that seems to me like that's saying that energy is not eternal, but it's finite.
Well,
I mean,
but
it seems it's finite in its existence.
all I would say is that those theories apply to, again, to our universe, not to the general cosmos. And so if, again, if our energy, if we're talking about like a pool of energy that's eternal, like I'm not necessarily saying our universe is using up all the energy. Anyway, that's all this to say, to bring this back around, like the Kalam to me, is there something about the Kalam you think I'm missing that
Well,
convinces you?
I think, yeah, I don't, I guess I'm confused on how you're extrapolating to a greater cosmos outside of the universe when we don't
Well, I'm
have
extrapolating because,
evidence for a greater.
right. But I think
Do I? Sorry,
anyone
you
who
broke up.
says anything, sorry, all I'm going to say is anyone who says anything, whether it's a god or any other hypothesis, they're all in hypothesis land because we have no measurement outside of our space time. And so maybe our space time is all there is, or maybe we're part of, a multiverse, or maybe we're part of, some
But
starting, like we just don't know. So basically we're all just dealing with no evidence and positing things. Is that
well,
fair?
if I mean, you would classify yourself as someone who is an empiricist, correct?
Generally, I don't think science is the only way to know things, if that's what you mean. Like I'm not a
Okay.
scientist, scientism.
Okay.
I consider myself a methodological naturalist in a way. Like I'm open to
Okay.
I'm, yeah. Is that clear?
No, that
And we do have to wind
that's
down soon because there's
clarifying.
some other calls on the line and we don't have much
I'm
time.
sorry.
I'm so sorry,
Okay.
Dean.
So,
No, no,
so
it's a fascinating
here's
conversation. I hate to cut it short. I'm so sorry.
I enjoy this conversation. I appreciate, Paul, and you guys just being open to having these types of dialogues. So let's just cap it there, Paul. Maybe next time, or
Okay.
we can exchange numbers or something and have a conversation about it. Or maybe I'll just
Yep.
come by Austin and maybe
Yeah.
That'd be great.
burn me burn me
Hope
to
to
the
see you.
stake, because I do weigh as much as a duck. So I think trouble there.
Burn you.
Uh,
All
so,
right.
yeah. So I'll see it if I can see it face the forum. Let's get together sometime either during it or outside of it, and let's chat about this. This is a great conversation. Thank you.
Sounds great. Or find me on Twitter.
Awesome.
All that
Thanks,
good.
Dean.
Yep.
All right. Bye. Thanks, Dean. Appreciate you.
All right, take care, guys. All right, bye.
Bye. All right.